Before he's even played an NBA game, we already know the vices and virtues of Rob Dillingham. He's a thrilling shot creator and shot maker, he's a shifty ball handler, and he's capable of the spectacular as both a scorer and a playmaker. If he was say 6'5", we'd be looking at a player who just went number 1 in the latest draft. Dillingham is a small guard though, entering the league at 6'1" and 165 pounds soaking wet. We know from the history of the league that it's inherently more difficult for small guards to pan out, even when they possess the talent that Dillingham does. It's not impossible though, and even in the modern NBA where skilled size rules the court, we've seen small guards find their place and find ways to contribute and become star level players. Isaiah Thomas became an all-star and an MVP candidate standing just 5'9". Kemba Walker was an all-star and a franchise pillar at under 6 foot as well. Trae Young is an offensive engine who can destroy any team, and you throw in small guards like Ty Lawson, Darius Garland, Lou Williams, Mike Conley, Jeff Teague, and even Tony Parker, and while you have a bunch of vastly different players there, you have a full complement of small guards who found huge success and laid the blueprint for Rob Dillingham to follow. Because no matter what, all small guards do a few specific things at a very high level. The first is setting up ball screens. You can see here that Dillingham was really efficient at scoring coming off screens, nailing pull-up jumpers and floaters at close to an elite level, while scoring really effectively overall in pick and roll situations. But in order to get to those numbers in college and eventually get to those same numbers in the NBA, it's so important for these smaller guards to do the early work on those ball screens and set their man up. For a small guard that doesn't have the strength to move defenders off their spot or see over the defense to make plays for others, baiting those defenders into a screen to free themselves up is a crucial part of the game. By using their speed, their handle, and their ability to change direction and pace, these small guards are able to shrug off more physical defenders by pulling them into screens and opening up scoring and playmaking pockets for themselves without having to wrestle with those stronger and taller defenders. Kemba Walker, whose game really does resemble what a maximized version of Dillingham's could be, was the master at this trait. You see how he drifts across to pull his man away from the incoming screen, and then with that screener coming up to meet him, he snaps that crossover the opposite way and pushes his man into the pick. That allows him a free run downhill at the big man, where he can use that speed and that shiftiness to avoid having to deal with physicality, and that negates his big size disadvantage. Again, on this possession, he's got the 2 ball screens on either side, and he's drifting off one, and then using that razor sharp crossover to springboard off the other screen and walk into a pull-up 3. The huge disadvantage that these small guards have compared to the big dominant wings of the league is their inability to overpower defenders and use straight line drives coming off screens to get downhill and finish through or over rim protectors. Those bigger bodies don't always have to use the same guile and the same creativity that smaller players do, and that makes life harder for them as a high usage on-ball scorer, and that's going to be one challenge Rob Dillingham has to navigate for his entire career. The positive sign for Dillingham though is that we've seen already that he has that knack for creating separation by setting up those ball screens. Like Kemba and Lou Will and all of those smaller guards who found themselves a place at the high table of the league, he's super impressive at handling in tight spaces, using his change of direction and speed, and manipulating defenders into ball screens. That's going to be a go-to skill for him at the next level. You see here how he gets his defender off balance with this hesitation before drawing him into the screen. The big defender wants to stay with the screener, and that opens up this pocket of space for him to get into his pull-up bag. It's just a perfect way to get those looks off rather than having to tussle with the bigger bodies. But for Dillingham and all of these small guards, setting up screens is extra important for getting downhill. He calls this screen up, starts to curl around it, and then once his defender is in position to ice that screen, that's when Dillingham will shift the ball, and now he's got that huge lane here with the rim protector having to slide over and help, rather than being set at the rim where Dillingham won't have that size to finish through him. Getting a defense into rotation is paramount for any offensive player, but for these small ball handlers, it becomes even more important. That's not only how they get to the rim to create for themselves, but it's how they get their teammates involved as well. They're not going to be able to see over defenses and make playmaking reads with their height. They have to draw defenders toward them and use that scoring gravity to find shooters, rollers, and cutters. So when Dillingham rejects this screen again with that scything crossover, this defender is up at the level and out of position. So the low man has to rotate over to cut off his drive, and that allows that corner shooter to flow down the baseline and find space to catch that lob. It really can look that easy when a player can bait and switch ball screening actions in the same way that Dillingham does. But what happens when there isn't a screen to use? For those successful small guards, they've been borderline elite at creating shots for themselves off the bounce. Again, they're not going to bully their way to the rim and use their size as a finisher, so they have to be more artistic with the way they pry open separation and find themselves open jumpers. Right now, there's no small guard that compares to Trae Young in this regard. Young's ability to use his handle to create just enough space to get his shot off is unparalleled, and while he's an expert in the pick and roll, it gives him that extra punch as a scorer whenever he gets a slower footed defender in front of him. The key here is getting the defender on their heels. If Trae Young can do that, he's going to scorch teams with his shot making. So here the crossover gets the defender on his heels. They want to stop that speedy guard from getting past them. So when Young drives, the defender is on his heels again, and when he yanks it back, that defender is stuck in reverse while Trae Young loads up that jumper. That's how he manages to get off his shot all the time, despite being so undersized. Here again, he's flowing in semi-transition. He forces the defender off kilter with his tight handle, starts to move toward the rim, and then pushes him back again with the change of direction. If a small guard has the ability to keep the ball on a string and push bigger and longer defenders back on their heels, they're going to find ways to get buckets. And we know that Rob Dillingham can get buckets too. There's still some way to go for him to be an elite level mid-range shot creator like Young and many of these smaller guards we've been looking at, but he was a high volume and deadly shooter off the bounce from deep in college and has a deep bag of tricks to get his stuff off in isolation situations. I still think there's a lot of room to grow in Dillingham's game in this aspect. I'd like to see him leverage his sick handle into even more space at the next level and against those NBA level defenders, but there's no doubt he's cut from that same cloth of shot creating bucket getters that have thrived as small guards in the NBA. And most importantly, Dillingham has that knack of getting defenders on their heels and then twisting them into a pretzel. There's that defender backing up here, and that's going to give him the leverage to get some space and then get his shot off. Then he strings together two moves. That crossover gets the defender leaning the wrong way, and then he pulls it back, and the defender is in that death position where his size advantage no longer matters, and his last hope is that Dillingham misses a rhythm jumper, and he just doesn't miss many of those. Now, not every coach in the NBA is going to let Bobby buckets cook in isolation, especially in the modern league where efficiency and analytics rule the day, but it's a really valuable tool to have in his scoring belt, And if his shot creation becomes more and more reliable as he gets older and more in tune with NBA defenders, it could be something we see more often, in the same way that all of those small guards before him were able to break free from the chains of structured offense and make shots in those same situations. Now, the final thing that, in my opinion, these smaller guards need to excel at and find success in the NBA with is being able to thrive off the ball. And this is just a really broad skill set. With so many big ball-dominant wings in the league right now, these small guards aren't always going to be able to soak up huge usage and operate as a true offensive engine, especially if they're going to play on winning teams and actually compete deep into the season. So it's not just being able to camp in the corner and knock down catch and shoot jumpers. It's about being able to use that speed that they have to fly off screens or out of intricate offensive actions. It's about being able to correctly space within the offense and find shooting pockets to flow into around other ball-dominant players. And it's all about using that burst off the catch to get downhill and make plays as a scorer or a playmaker from inside the arc. And Timberwolves fans don't have to look far to find the guiding light to provide that role model for Dillingham in this regard. Because Mike Conley has been an elite off-ball presence ever since he arrived in the Twin Cities, and he's going to be there to mentor Dillingham right away. Conley hasn't just been a beacon for pick and roll playmaking alongside Rudy Gobert, he's become a legitimately elite off-ball scorer in recent years. He can absolutely provide a floor spacing force when he's just chilling in the corner, but the way he moves off screens and uses his shooting gravity to get inside the arc is crucial to the way Minnesota play, with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns soaking up a ton of on-ball value. I really think that this off-ball work is going to be where Dillingham can thrive the most within Minnesota's system. Again, he's playing with Edwards and Towns, and that's going to lend itself to more time spent off the ball, but in general he's just a truly dangerous scorer off the ball, and he's going to feast in that area once he gets his feet under him at the elite level. He was an unbelievable shooter at Kentucky. Not only did he knock down over 44% of his total threes, but he was near best in class as an off-ball shooter, and it didn't matter whether he was being guarded heavily or not guarded at all. He will need some time to get adjusted to the big league, but Dillingham was a flamethrower in college, and a lot of that came in off-ball situations in the same way that they'll come in Minnesota. What I think would be most impressive to see him doing within Minnesota's current roster construction is coming off screens to give them another movement shooter. I love the way he uses his quickness to get inside the arc here and then pulls his man back out into the exit screen, and he's got that quick trigger from the corner to finish it off. This time it's floppy action where he has those two screens to choose from. He runs his man off the weak side pick, uses his aggressiveness against him, doubles back, and then burns him off that strong side floppy screen. And then he has that composure to let that hurried closeout fly by and walk into a one dribble pull-up. Whether he's lining up next to Ant or Cat or Conley or any combination of the three, you can see how Dillingham's off-ball moving can slot in seamlessly alongside those guys. Those reps will be super important for his growth and his scalability at the next level. And even more importantly than that, you want to see him using that shooting gravity to get to the rim. Dillingham was a poor finisher at the rim in college, and you'd expect that to get even worse in his early NBA years, but one way he can make life a little easier for himself in that regard is using his quick burst to get to the rim when he's playing in an off-ball role. You want to see him really attacking the defender with speed like this. You see how he smartly starts to lift up to create a better passing angle here, and then before the ball even arrives, he's on the move and beating his man and the rim protector to get to that spot. That's a really easy way for someone with his short burst capabilities to thrive at the rim in the half court. Again, this defender is worried about the jumper and coming in at a bad angle, Dillingham is able to get him on his hip and skate past him, and that means he can get a lane opened up so he can get into his floater bag. And I think this possession really just sums up the excitement we should all have for Dillingham as an off-ball menace. He makes this smart flare to the corner to maintain the spacing of the offense, which is a really underrated facet of off-ball knowledge, and then he's already moving toward the rim when he catches the ball. His Steve Nash dribble under the rim and kick out forces the defense into rotation, and then he's just a knockdown catch and shoot player from the corner, and he finishes it off with a 4-point play. If that's the type of player we're going to see dropped into Minnesota's Western Conference Finals team, we're going to see some really fun basketball coming out of the Twin Cities. So whether Rob Dillingham can be the next great small guard does remain to be seen. We know how hard it is for undersized players to make their mark on this league. What we do know though is that Dillingham has the skill set and that raw talent to follow the path that those super fun small guards have laid out before him. Thanks again for watching Howls and Growls. Please subscribe for more.